You're listening to Range Minded from Independence Indoor Shooting. This is episode 11, where we dive into range etiquette. We talk about range safety first and foremost, but then we go over what makes the difference between good and bad range behavior, some things to avoid when you're at the range, and we throw in a few interesting stories that we've all experienced as range safety officers. As always, thanks for listening, and we hope you'll enjoy Range Minded episode 11, the proper range etiquette. Hello, and welcome to Range Minded, episode number 11.
Welcome back, guys.
We are all back together again. Steve is back with us.
One big happy family.
Steve Zimmerman, Ricky Kasner, and myself, Mark Long. And today we're going to talk about range etiquette.
Range etiquette.
Now, this goes beyond just the range rules.
I like how Steve is just repeating.
He's chomping at the bit right now.
At the bit.
He's got a lot of stories. We're going to talk more than just range rules, because obviously there's safety rules that are no laughing matter.
No.
But there are some things that you can do to be a better range user, I guess. And there are some stories I think that we'll share of some not so good range users.
Yeah, I'm sure some stuff will come to mind.
Because, yeah, you can be annoying or make other people uncomfortable, which is
very dangerous. It could be a really bad day at the range with some people.
And that's the thing. And just to start off on a serious note is, things can happen real fast before you even know what's going on. So it is important to be safe. And maybe we should start with a little bit of range safety, just in case, because a lot of people may only have an outdoor range where there is no range safety officer, or they go out into BLM land. So why don't we start with that? Steve, as the range director, range manager at Independence Indoor Shooting.
The range something.
The range guy. The range whatever.
That's what it says on my business card, actually. Whatever.
Why don't you kind of share with us some of the safety rules we have, at least here at Independence, and how we stay so safe here.
Sure. I can only assume that most of the listeners have been here before, but hopefully we get some new listeners. I think every week we get one or two more. When you come here, obviously, we got the general safety rules. Then there's usually 4 that everybody follows, right? So no matter what, you're going to treat every gun like it's loaded all the time, no exceptions, right? Because we're treating it like it's loaded, we're never going to point that gun at something we're not willing to destroy, so we got to keep it pointed in a safe direction. Excuse me. Here, the downrange is the only direction, not the ceiling or the floor or your neighbor, obviously. Finger off trigger till you made the decision to fire, and then you got to know where that bullet's going to stop, right? So this is where, when I give a safety brief at the range, I try to take it outside the walls of the range as well. So when people are out in the desert shooting, you got to really think about where that bullet's going to terminate. So you got to pay attention to your backstop or what's beyond your target. And I think a lot of people get excited when they go out to the desert and they don't pay attention to what's really happening. I've heard some incredible stories. Jeff, our gunsmith, was telling me one last year that happened to him. It was pretty crazy.
Not fun.
No, they pulled up. He and his brother were shooting south of town here, and they were shooting at a target, and all of a sudden here's this right in front of his foot. Bounced up. And if you know Jeff, he didn't hold anything back as far as the conversation from that point. And they looked around and they could see the pickup from where these people were shooting, so they know that people could see them.
And they were shooting in their direction.
In their direction.
Oh, that would not go over well.
And I think for me it'd be tough not to return fire at that point. I guess they went over there and they had a really in-depth conversation about safety. And I'm sure it was colorful, which it should have been at that point.
There's really no reason to hold back at that point.
It's crazy. So that's why it's so important when you go out. And then I tell, like scouting organizations and stuff, they need to set up a shooting line. They need to have a range safety officer dedicated to that event. And I don't think that a lot of scout leaders think about that either.
Some scout leaders might not even have that much experience shooting themselves. So
and if they're not aware,
not shooting themselves, but
right?
Yeah, please don't be awful. And if they're not aware in the scouting organization, they require somebody have some sort of certification, whether it's a NRA range safety officer or an instructor at any shooting activity in a BSA event. And I think that gets overlooked.
Yeah, it's not necessarily something you think about because you just go, we're going to go out shooting and nothing's going to happen. And
well, in this area, too, if you're not from out of state, everybody grew up shooting, save a few. The vast majority of the state population spent time behind a firearm.
So I have experience also just going out. I never even shot in an indoor range for my first, I'd say, 24 years of life.
Really?
I had never shot in an indoor range because we always just went out to the desert. That's all you did.
That's what you did, yeah.
Yeah, and I grew up in Nevada, in Reno. So there was actually, Nevada is 85% BLM, so there's a lot of space you can be able to just shoot.
It's just too hot.
It's hot. It's hot sometimes. You learn to get over that, though. But places like Idaho, and Idaho's pretty good still, but it doesn't have that much open space, that BLM. So
well,
you
it's
have
closing in, too.
Yeah, you have the population growing, more people going out there, and they have never even held a firearm. And so the question comes, and I've had a lot of crazy experiences, not in Nevada, because usually when you're in Nevada, you're shooting by yourself. There's not another soul around. But here, actually on the eastern side of the state, crazy in Colorado especially, actually, when I owned my own business, I gave my students an option if they wanted to go to an indoor range, which cost them more money, or they could go to National Forest and we could go shoot there. But pretty soon I put the kibosh on even the National Forest option because it was just too dangerous. I could trust my students. I would establish a line. I was a range safety officer. And even though I was communicating with the other people out there on the range, I would call cold range, let them know I'm going down to change targets, things like that. And they would start shooting while we were down there.
Oh my gosh.
And it was just like, so yeah, it gets dangerous as population grows. And so that's an important thing to talk about, is what you were saying is like, how do you handle it out in the desert or in the wilderness when you're shooting with other people?
Right. Well, and even there are indoor ranges that don't have range safety officers. I remember back in Illinois, there was one that had been around for quite a long time, had looked like it had been around for quite a long time, and you just paid your range fee in the office and then walked over to the indoor range, and that was it.
And I think most indoor ranges are that way. Maybe the modern ones now, they see the benefit of having somebody patrolling the range. But a lot of times, it's just somebody at the range counter. They'll look up and look at the monitor. They'll have cameras in the range. And the bad thing about that is, by the time something happens, whether it's something minor or major, it takes time for somebody to get into the range to make a correction. So somebody might be stupid, like, so here we have a cased and holstered drill outside of the shooting booth. So you're not ever going to handle a firearm outside of that booth. And if somebody's just watching the screen, making that correction to the shooter, they may not even realize they did it, and that time's already passed. Instead of being, nip it right in the bud, right off the bat, and using it as a teaching moment instead of as an insulting moment or an accusation.
Right, and I think even if it's a minor incident, somebody running through the range and moving quickly is going to put people on edge anyway. Like if they're running down the range to try to correct something from somebody, it's going to kind of put everybody on edge.
Yeah, like you said, it makes all the other customers nervous. And they're like, I'm not going to that range again.
Or like, what am I going to do wrong? Or what are they going to ding me on that I don't know about?
And I've been to ranges where, maybe I've worked at ranges where there's, I'm not laid back when I'm officiating on a range. I'm not chill, but I'm not overly aggressive either. I try not to be like, oh, you gotta, you know what I mean?
You're vigilant, but friendly.
Yeah. I try to use it as a teaching thing. I want to teach somebody the safety, not belittle them and tell them how stupid they are by not doing it and get out of my range type of thing. That's not the point. The idea is to keep shooters, keep them shooting, right? Have them enjoy the activity and hope they bring other people later and do it again. We want to make sure that's a very positive experience. We don't want to have any kind of negative reinforcement to where they don't like shooting anymore.
Nobody likes to feel stupid. And I think there's a little bit of a learning curve when it does come to shooting, especially with safety. And it takes a while to get that safety in your head to where it's second nature. and that it is. I think it is important. You're right, to be able to teach people rather than belittle them or make them feel stupid. When I've been an RSO,
and I don't want to make it sound like
way.
if there's like an obvious or repeated infraction that I'm like, oh, come on now, you got to do it. Like if it's something a big deal, I will kick people off there. I don't care. I'd rather have one upset customer than a whole range full of people really uneasy and not sure what's going on, or have an incident that.
A major
you
incident.
can always look back and regret that you didn't do something, or you can just act when you know you need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to just using your eyes and having kind of a gut reaction sometimes, where you listen to your gut and say, something's off here.
And I really like being an RSO. I think it's a lot of fun. I always kind of liken it to being like a bartender,
Yeah, kind of. I could see that.
People are there to have fun or to practice or whatever, and you're there to help them. And not that, I don't know, maybe drinking is fun. I don't drink, I don't know, but you're there to be a friend and to teach.
It's a communal activity.
Yeah.
You're kind of all there together for the same thing.
Yeah, and it's a familiar face. Usually they come to see you and hey, Steve, how are you? I'm good. You want to shoot my gun? Yeah, sure, why not? And it's fun. I enjoy that interaction. But like I say, even if they're a seasoned member or whatever, I don't know, I'll remind them. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, that's a good way to be.
As he hits his watch against the counter.
I'm going to take that off.
That was a good watch.
It still is. Maybe.
Yeah, you don't put it on that desk. You might
lose it. Yeah.
If you could only see the office.
Should just put up all the guns as soundproofing.
Yeah.
Just got guns strewn around the table. That would work. So that's a little bit about safety. Obviously, you want to make sure that that's top of mind whenever you go to any range, whether there's an RSO or not, whether it's indoor or outdoor.
Or just shooting as a group. If you're taking friends camping or whatever, you need to establish some kind of firing line and some kind of protocols as far as commands, safety, having somebody. And I know it sounds super...
A designated person.
Yeah, it sounds super cheesy and silly that if you're going to go camping, you're going to have somebody dedicated to watching the safety of the rest of the shooters. But in reality, if you don't, and accident may not happen, or it may, why not have somebody just there paying attention to help out? And then you can switch people out so it's not one guy left out.
An extra set of eyes never hurt anybody.
No. It's
well, even with
a lot of accidents happen camping and stuff. It's silly not to.
Even with classes that I've RSO'd, there's usually one or two instructors, and then there's myself RSOing, and there's maybe 14 people. There's 7 people on the line each time, and even every once in a while they'll catch something I won't, or I'll catch something they won't, and whether that's somebody swinging their gun up and down. Or crossing the line, or trying to rack their slide and move the gun next to their neighbor rather than with their body, we all kind of have to watch, and we probably don't catch 100% of the mistakes either.
You probably won't. I don't know how to make this sound without making it sound like our RSOs are worthless, but the reality is, and it's not ours, it's any RSO in any range, you're probably, they won't stop stuff 100% of the time, and chances are they're going to be the first observer to something happening, whether it's the reality suicide or somebody getting shot.
Yeah, a bullet is fast.
Yeah,
a trigger finger's fast.
Yeah,
things
a
can
lot
happen
faster
very quickly.
than somebody even walking all the way across the range.
Yeah,
like we can talk about what happened at Guns and Gear over in
Idaho Falls.
And that's a range you're very familiar with.
Yeah.
But yeah, so somebody took their own life. And there was an RSO on the range.
Yeah, there was. And that is a sad reality to ranges, and I don't normally tell people this, that suicide on the range is a reality. Just because it's easy to get a gun, there's no background check to rent a firearm to shoot at a range. There are some things that we do as a range, and most ranges do, to try to see that and keep that from happening in the beginning. There are some signs, but sometimes it just happens. That's just the way it is. And I don't want to go down a dark hole, but yeah, that's kind of something that you need to be aware of too as a shooter on the range, that there is a reality of...
There's an imbalance.
Yeah, there's a reality of bad things happening all the time. And I guess that still does tie into range etiquette. Being a shooter on the range, you still got to be observant. You still have to be out of the white I guess.
I was going to say, even on the range, you kind of have to, you do have to be situationally aware to make sure that people that you're with are acting safely, or, maybe there's somebody next door in the next booth who's acting erratically or something like that. There's something that's off.
Absolutely.
And there's no shame in telling the RSO, saying, hey, just want to let you know, or even coming out to the counter and say there's something weird going on here. Then the RSO or the range can take the proper steps.
And I'll be 100% honest. More than once we've asked people to leave because, and maybe I've been around it a little bit more. I have been around it more than some of the RSOs. Just uneasy about things, and so we've
you
asked
have to
people
follow
to leave.
your gut.
Yeah, I'd rather not clean up a mess.
It's much better to be safe rather than sorry. Like you said, it's easy. It's better to have one person who's maybe upset rather than have something major happen.
Yeah, we've asked people to leave before.
Well, and we've had a couple of incidents already here. Nothing crazy, but
Nothing
a couple
physical.
Reloads that have blown up the guns.
Mostly people not paying attention to what they're doing, but luckily no real safety, physical injury.
Well, and I can tell you that's like Mark brought up the classes earlier, and that's a huge thing for me as the academy director, and I know as our RSOs and then our instructors. Actually, recently our instructor, one of our top instructors, he sent me a link to training that happened over. It was a high end elite trainers that they were carrying on this like week long training event, and even them, he's like, this issue had.
You sent me that link, right?
I think so.
Yeah, it was a training course. I can't remember what it was, but it was Masad Ayub. Was the instructor.
And if you guys don't know who Masad is, now that
guy's a big deal.
Yeah.
But even the long story short there is that even he had a negligent discharge. I think he grabbed somebody's, and that's kind of a violent term, but he just picked up somebody's revolver out of their holster and was showing something, but pointed it at the sky. So at least he had it pointed in a relatively safe direction. Probably not the safest, but he had checked that it was clear, had somebody else check it, closed the cylinder, brought the hammer back and said, this is how you do this, and bam.
Yep.
And a round went off.
Yeah, and so it showed, and what the point was, my instructor was sending that to me, is you can never get in your comfort zone of, we've got this taken care of, we've got this handled, because firearms, I mean, they're dangerous tools,
and that's where,
if they're not used properly.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. That's where it comes back to the 4 general safety rules. Is keep treating that gun like it's loaded and pointing it in a safe direction. If we're following 3 of those 4 rules, there should never be any major injuries. The minute we drop down, it's kind of like a stool, right? You can have up to 3 legs on a stool. If you go to two legs on a stool, it's going to tip over.
Yeah.
Same thing with with the safety rules. You got to be super vigilant.
Well, and there's 4 safety rules generally that people like to say, but the NRA has
there's like a whole bunch of them. I can
30 safety rules.
There's a whole bunch. But
it gets into hygiene and different things like that. But.
And that's something we probably should talk about too. We'll get into that maybe a little bit later. But yeah, there's just those 4 general are really, everything kind of boils down to those ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the foundation, I think, in range etiquette.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, let's move on to etiquette then.
Yeah.
Because you can be a courteous shooter or a discourteous shooter.
I've seen both.
Maybe
I've been both.
Let's start this way, Steve. What is your biggest pet peeve when you see on the range?
Biggest pet peeve,
and not necessarily something unsafe, but rather something that just annoys you that people do.
I see these guys play Call of Duty all day long, and they decide they're going to actually come shoot, and they think they know everything. The couch commandos, that just drives me nuts, and they're unteachable. You know what I mean? They say, "Oh, I saw this on YouTube." They don't say that, but that's the
mindset.
I'm pretty sure that's where the mindset is exactly. Well, yeah, I watched Travis Haley do this on YouTube. Well, you're an idiot.
I heard something once there. I was reading a forum that's what it was, and this kid on there was like, "I'm going to the range for my first time. I'm so nervous." He's like, "I'm gonna shoot a rifle," and he's like, "I'm just nervous that I'm gonna start quick scoping." You know how you know how in video games,
Yeah, where they bring the scope up and shoot and come back.
And then the guy responded, he was like, "You're an idiot."
Yeah, you're gonna learn real fast.
So, but yeah, anyway,
Yeah.
that's beside the point. That's on the video game level,
Right.
But that's really not even finger, trigger control. That super drives me nuts.
Yeah.
And I'll correct people multiple times. Hey, make sure if you're bringing that gun back, take that finger off the trigger.
That always makes me the most nervous is when they
And they'll do the Magnum PI where the muzzle comes up right next to their nose, finger on the trigger the entire time, and then they'll fly rod that.
Do they
that
blow
muzzle.
Do they blow the smoke off their muzzle?
I'm sure some people do.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see people point it at the sky, or they come instead of being at low ready, they bring that gun up and then swing it down in front of them.
Yeah, that's what I'd say. If you can imagine like a fishing rod, I mean, that's exactly where that muzzle is doing.
Just whoosh. And I wonder why there's bullet holes in the baffles.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's the funny part, going downrange and seeing from beginning to end, there's bullet holes in every single baffle we have, and the ricochets on the walls.
Including above the booth. What?
And how?
Sorry, guys. If you're the one that shot the ceiling, I'm not sorry. If you're the one that shot the ceiling inside my booth, you're an idiot.
Yeah. You should be lucky you don't have to pay for it.
And if you want to sit down and be offended, I'll be happy to have a conversation because I need somebody to pay for those holes.
Yeah. Get your checkbook out and then we'll have a conversation.
And you sign the waiver saying that you'll pay for any damages. And yeah, is
that in the waiver?
Yeah.
Yeah, $20 a hole or
25 minimum.
Well, and there's also on the target runners.
Yeah, that stuff's expensive.
They have to be because they have to be able to withstand bullets.
And I guess that's another pet peeve. If
at close range,
we have some amazing people that help out on the range. If you haven't talked to Mike Perkins, that he's usually out 100-yard, he is honestly a world-class long-range shooter.
Really?
Legitimately.
Yeah, he went to New Zealand and won.
Yeah, he teaches all over the world. He hunts all over the world. The man is a genius, and I'm not like making that. I'm dead serious. So if you have any problems trying to dial in a scope, if you have any questions about loads, the guy's an encyclopedia. But I go into the 100-yard range, and I see ceiling,
in the 100-yard range?
Groups on baffles that at crazy oblique angles from the booth. Like, are you really that dumb that you can't see? You're shooting up,
and they're like, "Why am I not hitting my target? I swear I'm hitting."
And that's usually when Mike's not there.
I want to point out too, these baffles are about 8 feet high.
Yeah,
you can't reach them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so you really have to be
like
shooting
10 feet
straight up.
Yeah, it boggles the mind that I can't hit anything downrange. Well, it's because you're not going downrange. You're hitting the ceiling.
Yeah, and like I said, you see the walls on either side. There's ricochets on there. I'm surprised there aren't as many on the floor. And
I can understand, left and right limits. Like I can understand, scratching down the wall. There are holes in the tack range that obviously came from a far booth on the left towards somebody's target on the right. Very destructive behavior. Somebody that didn't care. But scratching lineal down the wall, I understand that. And the floor, I'm far less concerned about the floor than I am anything else. But I don't understand people.
Surprisingly, though, there aren't. I don't think I've seen very many, if any, holes or ricochets in the floor. Maybe it's like a strong, super strong floor.
Well, it's a high pressure concrete, and then it's coated with a coating on it. And usually, when people shoot, as long as it's not close to straight down, when a bullet hits a floor, it doesn't bounce back to the ceiling. Some people
it just follows the floor.
What happens is it hits the floor and it maybe stays about a foot off the floor, parallel into the backstop.
Which is what it would do to a wall when you hit. Well, I guess what it does to the wall when you hit the wall on the side.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. They skip across. So, like, if you think of skipping a rock across the water, that's what a bullet does to a surface.
Oh, okay. Because I feel like in movies where you shoot at a wall, like a cement wall, people think it automatically bounces right back.
Mm-mm.
No.
The only difference is if you're trying to curve a bullet off a wall, if the wall has a curve to it, then the potential of the projectile falling that wall is is great, but there's not a lot of round walls, radius walls.
Especially at shooting ranges.
Yeah.
Myth dispelled.
Yeah.
Actually, you brought up a good point talking about shooting targets that are not in your booth. Cross shooting?
Cross-lane shooting.
Cross-lane shooting.
That is not allowed.
That is not allowed. People still do it, though, don't they?
Husbands like to do it to wives. And
Why?
they
Just
tease
to mess with them?
Just to tease them. To
Well,
shoot
buddies
their targets.
will do that too when they're shooting. You know, it's a rule. I'm far less concerned about that rule than some of the other ones. But if it's somebody else's target, if somebody you don't even know, if somebody was putting holes in my target, I'd be a little upset.
Yeah, because you pay for those targets. Yeah. And sometimes the ones, especially the reactive ones, can be relatively pricey
it's
compared.
more money, and it's irritating.
Yeah.
Have we run into that issue?
Yeah, so just be courteous. You know, when you go into the range, we get a... Okay, here's another pet peeve of mine. It's a shooting range. It's going to be loud.
Your protection?
Well, we have people complaining, well, his revolver's too loud. What did you expect at a shooting range? So there's another one of my pet peeves.
Well, what are your thoughts, though, on people who have short-barreled rifles or AR pistols, and they have a huge compensator on them to mitigate recoil?
I might be that guy.
Because, well, this has been a thought of mine because I have an AR that I'm building and I want to put a compensator on it to kind of reduce the recoil a little bit. Plus, it looks cool. Whatever. Don't care.
Tacticalness.
Got to have a little bit. If anybody looks in your safe, they'd know. I like the traditionalist Ricky over here.
I lost all of my firearms in a boating accident, so I don't know what you're talking about.
What a shame.
It's terrible.
Sorry to hear that.
You took them all. All your truck guns went duck hunting with you.
They did. I lost them all in the swamp.
Bummer.
Terrible.
But you get these people with loud compensators on or loud muzzle devices. What are your thoughts on that? Is that something that people who own the AR should be considerate of, or is it just kind of something you should expect nowadays?
Again, it's a shooting range. What do you expect? I understand the complaint. 100% understand. And it's usually the older shooters that are frustrated. Again, I understand.
Well,
I can kind of sympathize.
A lot of time, I would say for that, the majority of our complaints come from the 100-yard of like people saying, I'm sighting in my rifle, and then this guy goes and blasts a large caliber.
I don't know if
it knocked my scope off.
Yeah, I don't know if that's
my scope.
I don't know if that particular customer is listening, but I'm sorry, dude, you're incorrect. The 50 will not knock your crosshairs off of your scope. So I don't even know how close the dude was to the 50, but the 50 went off, and he claimed that all the time he spent zeroing his scope in, it went off. If a percussion of another firearm 15 feet away knocked your scope off, you need a new scope.
You need to tighten your screws down.
Yeah, you got problems with your rings and your mounts. It's not somebody else's gun.
Yeah. So let's talk about good etiquette then.
Good things.
Yeah, good things.
Happy thoughts.
I want to point out that when we got in this morning, Steve was about half awake and he was talking like, "Hey, how's it going?" And now I got him all riled up. So we're going to try to keep that train rolling as long as we can. What else irritates Steve? But no, let's talk about good etiquette and what you can do to be a good shooter on a range.
Sure. The very first thing is don't bring your gun uncased or unholstered into my range. Okay? Into the store. We have a sign right out front that says all firearms must be cased or holstered. And we take that serious. I have no idea if that gun is loaded or not.
Yeah. I mean, it makes you nervous. Number one, you don't know how much training that guy has had.
Sure.
Number two,
I don't know his
anyone,
intent.
even if you're Masad Ayub, you don't have enough training to be carrying a gun around that is loaded, potentially loaded, unless you're at the booth. You know, it's just like you just don't do it.
Well, let me tell you a story. Okay, so we talked about Guns Against RFL. I used to work there. Okay, I was the range manager over there. One night, it was actually getting close to closing time, so it was getting late. And I'm talking to this couple. They're thinking about buying a gun, and the door dinger goes off, and I see this guy coming in. And you can kind of see him over the shelves. He was not a very tall guy, but I knew he had something in his hands. And I hear this. So just pardon me a second, and I lean over. I have my hand on my gun.
Yeah.
And I lean over, and this guy's walking up, and he's got this gun in his hand, right? It's looked like an HK MP7, which I knew at that point. I was like, well, This guy doesn't have an MP7.
Right.
He comes up and he's like, hey, what will you give me for this gun? It was an airsoft gun. He decided to rack his airsoft gun as he walks through the door, I guess to check it. And I didn't tell him, but, you know, this guy had no idea how close he was to not going home.
Yikes.
Because I have no idea what his intent is.
And you have to assume
I wasn't
the worst.
just going to blast the guy for no reason, right?
But you have to assume the worst.
But I had no idea what was going on. And then he's like, well, I want this gun. I was like, I cannot get an MP7 for you. And I know you will not pass a background check to get this MP7. But, so that's what I'm, bring a gun in cased or holstered, please. Because it's not like all of us.
And we have cases.
Yeah, I've got loaner cases.
And we have buckets that we can give you if you don't have a holster for your pistol or case.
But it's not like all of us here, all the staff are like trigger happy. We're ready we want to blast a fool for coming in the door doing something stupid. We
not
don't
at all.
I do not. None of our staff wants to have to do that.
Or do we even want to yell at somebody? But
no, you don't want to.
It's just like
we had a very seasoned veteran, obviously a veteran, come in here. Brought he's got licensing. He's got some cool stuff, and I'm pretty sure it was an M4. And then he had one of his cool grenade launchers on the bottom that run 12 gauge shotgun shells. One of the staff went over and says, "Hey, you know what? We need to have you cased or holstered. Can you mind if I check your gun real quick?" Mag in the gun, chambered.
Yikes.
Opened up he had a 12 gauge ready to rock in the little grenade launcher. And then the guy wondered why we were mad at him.
yeah.
Well, let's see.
Yeah, I feel bad sharing these stories because maybe they're listening, but I had one guy, he came in and he asked for a holster. He was looking for a holster for his pistol. So he's looking for a holster for his pistol because he doesn't currently have one. So he's carrying his pistol around in his hand.
Oh, dear.
Oh, Lord.
And when I go to check the gun, it's loaded. The whole mag is loaded up.
Mag's loaded up and chambered. And
he's just carrying the gun around. And I'm like...
I think some of it just comes down to not thinking about
understanding. So please, I guess what this conversation comes down to is if you're coming to the store, whether you're going to just hang out, I totally promote open carry, concealed carry. I'm all for either one. Keep that gun in the holster or in the bag or case, whatever you got. Until if you're planning on shooting, wait till you go on the range to show anybody. If you're coming and you're looking for a holster, don't pull out your gun and be like, hey, I've seen too many people get flagged by customers' guns. I've been flagged by customers' guns.
And what's the number one thing that they say once you say, can I please check
it's unloaded.
It's unloaded.
And how many times is it not?
I got chastised by a very good friend of mine. I showed him a gun. He wanted to look at a Glock, and I showed him the gun. And I flagged him, right? Nonchalant, didn't even think about it. I won't use his language, but he was very stern about not pointing a gun at him.
Please don't do that, sir. I'm sure that's exactly
what he said. And he is a top-tier instructor. He is a legitimate instructor. And at first, I was like, thinking of what? And then I was like, you know what? He's right. Rules are rules, and I broke a rule.
And I think that's something good to point out, that it can happen to anybody. Even if you're around guns every day, all day, it can happen to everybody.
Yeah.
We're in our competitions. I was using a 22 pistol, and I have a case for it. And when we do the competitions, you have to bring the guns cased or holstered up to the table, to load and make ready. You can't do that
and there's
at the booths.
There's reasons for those rules.
100%. And so it's kind of a more righty-friendly gun, and being a lefty, it's a little tougher to get that in the case. And somebody pointed out to me, I accidentally swept my own hand with the pistol trying to get it in the case. And I was like, thanks for pointing that out. Now I know I have to kind of switch it and do it another way, right. get it in the case another way. So that's even something to consider. You don't even sweep yourself because sure don't want to get shot in the hand.
Mm-hmm. It happens.
One question, though, and I've always been curious about this because I've never done it, but if you're carrying concealed, like inside the waistband or something, and you want to come shoot, you can use that firearm, can't you?
Yeah, you can.
What's the protocol for that?
So we do have it stays in the holster till you're inside the booth.
And you draw it one time.
Yeah. So we do have a holster protocol here at the store. I'm happy to spend a few minutes, and any of the range officers are happy to spend some time with you to make sure that gun's coming in and out of the holster correctly, and we're not flagging yourself, you're not keeping your finger in the trigger. But that doesn't apply to concealed carry holsters. So we do have some classes where we talk about concealed carry, and you may have a chance to do that. Is that right, Ricky? You have some concealed carry classes that way. But as a general on the range, no concealed carry drawing. Before we opened, we had an instructor / competitive shooter that appendix carried, and I walked him all through the range, and, showed him the facilities, and he's like, "You're gonna let people, draw from the holster?" And I said, "Nope." He says, "Why?" And I says, "Because I don't want to deal with injuries." "Oh, I will not." Well, yeah. You tell me somebody that's appendix carrying doesn't have a higher risk of hitting an artery than a guy outside the waistband strong side?
Mm-hmm. Or something even more important than an artery?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and we've heard those stories of people. Never again will they have children or have that opportunity. So.
Yeah, so it's not that I don't have the confidence that particular shooter couldn't do it. It's if I'm going to keep a rule, if I'm going to establish a rule, I'm sorry, it's across the board, and I'm not going to cave. That's just the way it is, and I don't care if I hurt your feelings.
Right. So, if you do have a concealed carry piece that you're carrying and you want to shoot it at the range, you come in. Probably best to communicate that and say, "Yeah, I'm going to shoot a gun that I actually have inside the waistband right now," and probably let the RSO know if there's one on there as well, and then take it out of your holster, set it pointed down range on the booth, and then you're good to go.
The better way to do it, I would think, is at least my holster. Some holsters are different, but I can actually just pull out the whole holster and then put that on the bench, and I can draw the gun from the holster. So you're never once drawing from concealment with the risk of shooting, because that trigger guard is covered.
And it made me think of something. This is kind of a good topic to just take a quick tangent on. So some of the older guys that grew up watching Miami Vice remember how cool that the 1911 is in the shoulder holster. Now, some of those have a different orientation of where the muzzle is on that firearm. At a range I used to work at, we had an old dude, a very proficient shooter. The guy was a retired, veteran, very capable with a 1911. But it was a horizontal holster. So where's that muzzle? How many people did he muzzle walking in and out of the range?
Pointed straight back behind you.
Yeah. So, but he was conscious when he retrieved his gun out of his holster inside the booth. He turned to where the muzzle was downrange to retrieve his firearm. He didn't draw from the holster inside the booth, none of that stuff. But to use his firearm, he paid attention to where that muzzle was to get it out of the holster. Same goes for shooting bags. If ladies have concealed carry purses, you're not going to draw from the purse from my booth. Sorry if that hurts your feelings, but again, I don't care. I got to be conscious about other people, not just you at the booth.
Yeah.
So you got to pay attention to where that muzzle comes in and out of the holster. So if you have a problem with that, you can come see me. We'll have a conversation about it.
That's what the desert's for.
Yeah.
That's what BLM or National Forest is for.
Yeah, or there's holster classes, so you can learn safely how to do it. That was one of the things in the concealed carry class that I learned, was how to properly draw from the holster. There is a certain way to do it, and depending on where your holster is, whether it's cross draw, strong side, anything like that, there is a safe way to do it, and it is kind of a muscle memory that you have to learn.
And there's some principles to it, and a lot of those principles apply to whether it's in a purse or a backpack or a shoulder holster. Those principles are all going to apply, but you just might execute them in a different fashion.
Right. Because you have to, like you said, make sure you know where that muzzle's pointed no matter what, because as soon as that trigger guard is exposed, especially if you're in a situation and there's adrenaline going, you don't know you can't guarantee that your finger's going to be completely off the trigger.
And then a side note to the side note, if you're going to buy a small gun like LCP or something like that, and you put it in your pocket, don't be an idiot. Buy a pocket holster, please.
Yeah, don't ever leave the trigger guard exposed if you're carrying. Important tangent.
Yeah.
Well, and that's an important thing to look at when you get a holster too. Does it cover your trigger guard?
Yeah.
A lot of people will make their own holsters.
Yeah, I've made my own holsters, and
you just have to make sure that that's covering the trigger guard.
And spend money on a holster. Don't buy the gun bucket that fits every 67 firearms, and buy one that fits.
It's important.
Yeah.
Well, let's get back to the range a little bit.
Yeah, back to the real topic, right?
So we've covered sound, we've covered safety. What's something that maybe people don't consider that you think is important to note when you go to a range?
Well, for me, it doesn't really fall under etiquette necessarily, but what drives me nuts is I see people walking into the range with just earplugs. They're like, "Oh, this is good because it's clogging the hole in my ears." But the thing that they don't know is the back of your skull actually can transfer energy into your inner ear as well.
Okay.
So at the very least, if you're not doubling up with earplugs and earmuffs, at least wear earmuffs, because the earmuffs are then coming to the back of the skull. They're covering that up. But with earplugs, just earplugs in your ear, you can still damage your hearing.
And you can't get that hearing back.
Nope. It's going to be gone.
My rule is I'll wear muffs if we're doing handgun stuff, but if it's rifles, I'm going to double up most of the time, unless I don't have plugs on me. But it's always, actually, in my backpack, I always carry the ear protection with me, the muffs, because you never know if you're going to be shooting or whatever.
Brings me to another pet peeve.
Let's hear it.
Dre Beats headphones are not ear pro.
What is it? Oh, yeah.
People bring those? You're not wearing Beats by Dre right now, but they're kind of similar.
Yeah.
They're over-the-ear headphones.
Noise canceling headphones are not ear protection.
That's kind of sad to hear.
Yeah. I've seen people use cartridges as ear pro.
Well, that's an old school thing. That's like back in World War II, or the movies at least.
Yeah.
You see they have cartridges in their ears to protect their hearing. But
I guess it's better than nothing, but buy proper ear pro. Spend the money. You can get good passive earmuffs, good sets of muffs for $15.
Oh,
yeah, they're super cheap. And they do a good job. Or you can even get electronic ones where you can hear for, I don't know, 30, 40. I think a pair of Howard Lights are 30 or 40.
And I love I've got some expensive set of ear pro. I love them. You can go anywhere from, $10, $15, $20 to a set of ear pro to several $100s. And I know this, several $100s for a set of ear pro. There are some benefits to spending a little bit more money. You don't have to spend $500 on a set of earmuffs. I'm kind of a geek. I like to be able to listen to music, and I can make phone calls.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Which is probably not quite accurate on a gun range, but I wouldn't do it while I'm shooting.
Right.
Because then I just couldn't hear completely.
But you can listen to music. They make Bluetooth headphones. There's a couple of folks here who have those. They're Peltors.
Yeah, I got the Peltor 500s. I love them. I'm kind of partial to Peltor anyway. I think they fit a little better to my head. Everybody's head's different. That's too. I got some Howard Light like Ricky's got there. They just don't.
I have a small head.
They just don't.
You do have a small head.
They don't seal around my ears. So when you're considering,
but I have a large brain.
Yeah, something. Is that what it is?
Go on, sorry, Steve.
When you consider ear pro, if you're going to go muffs, think about the padding around the cup of the muff and how it fits to your head. It's got to seal.
It really does, yeah. I have probably a bigger size head, and I've noticed I tried on the pair of Peltors, and those actually fit a lot better.
I love my Peltors.
Because the other thing to consider is if you're shooting for an hour or two, or like in the case of RSOing, we're on the range for 4 hours. Eventually those muffs are going to wear on you and compress your head a little bit, and you're going to feel it after a while.
And new muffs, it's like having a vice on your head.
Yeah, you have to break them in a little bit.
That's why I like getting I like the cheap, $1 to $2 ear protection or eye protection glasses, because they're thin. Because the worst thing to happen is
the arms of the glasses.
Yeah, they kill your ears after a while. At least mine.
There's another pet peeve right there. Your glasses. That's I guess that falls under safety. Your $2 Walmart sunglasses are not eye pro.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're not shatterproof.
No.
What are your thoughts on eyeglasses?
Shatter resistant, I should say.
So a lot of the modern eyeglasses are the polycarbonate lens, which are shatterproof. If you can, please put something over, because that's not going to stop brass from getting in or something from the side or whatever. I've seen it happen bouncing off the walls, and they catch a 22 casing, right where the lens meets the cheek, and then they get burned real bad.
Mm-hmm. And they make eye protection shooting glasses with prescriptions in them.
We have bifocal shooting glasses that we sell here.
Yeah.
And they're not that expensive.
Yeah, because and maybe that's not perfect on my end, but usually I wear just eyeglasses. If I am wearing contacts, though, I do grab a set of eye protection.
If you're willing to spend the money, you can have prescription shooting glasses made. They can get expensive. I'm not going to sugarcoat. They can get really expensive.
Well, eyeglasses can get expensive as you move up with the lenses and the frames and all that. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
But that's important. And speaking of getting burned by brass,
It hurts.
let's talk about
Shirts.
clothing.
Yeah.
All right. So this usually goes down to the lady shooters, right?
Unless Steve decides to wear a spaghetti strap tank top and his short skirt.
Not again. It was really embarrassing
One time.
last time. It was worth it.
It was embarrassing for everybody else.
That's why I did it. So ladies, if we have ladies listening, or if the guys bringing their wives or girlfriends, not at the same time, to the range, the low cut shirts, sure, whatever. That's not a good idea at the range. I call it the hot brass dance. It's gonna happen. I've had a gun pointed at me because of that. The lady, she took a piece of brass down the blouse, and it's not comfortable. If you've ever taken brass down the shirt, it hurts.
Yeah, it's not fun.
And so, in fact, in Idaho Falls, we had a lady shoot the booth because that happened. It went down her shirt, and she flinched and, clenched her hands, and boom, the gun went off inside the booth, hit the wall in the booth. Luckily, they're ballistic because the guy next to her could have got it. So please wear a T-shirt or something that
Covers the neckline
a little bit higher. And no flip-flops. That's the other thing.
Yeah, hot brass between your toes.
So
or hot brass under your heel.
So when it comes to the flip-flop thing, like it is a rule in our range, but I kind of think that the problem will solve itself if you do bring flip-flops to the range. So I'm a little less concerned about flip-flop because I kind of want that person to get burned in that case. Is that bad? That's really, probably shouldn't say that. But
No, it's you learn by example. You learn from experience, rather.
it should only happen one time.
Yeah,
So,
But just don't. Or you can avoid it by actually just wearing shoes.
that helps.
and here's the thing: I've gotten burned a lot. I wasn't wearing a spaghetti strap like Steve likes to do on his off time.
Yeah, can I get that back, by the way?
Yeah. But no, it'll go down my neck
Mental
or
picture.
something in the back when I have a collar.
It hurts.
And so it's important to talk about what do you do when that happens.
Sure.
You just realize that
We can
you're
take a few
going
minutes
to
for that
get
if you want.
burned. It's just going to happen, but keep that gun in a safe direction.
Yeah, and that's the thing to do. I think what it is it's a pain response, and your first response to any pain is to tense up.
Yep.
And if you have your finger on the trigger, you're gonna.
Very first thing you do.
Sympathetic
Yeah,
firing.
yeah. First thing you do is put that gun down safely. Mm-hmm. Safely put it down, and then, depending on if you can get to it. So if it went down your shirt, ladies, if it went down the front of your shirt, you try and grab and bunch everything up inside that, without grabbing skin, right? But just bunch that shirt up and grab it with that way, and so you kind of got a hot pad with the clothing, and just wait.
Because it cools down pretty quickly.
Yeah, I've taken brass down the shirt. It does hurt a lot. I had a 22. I had a colored shirt on, and it just kind of stuck, and it stuck on my neck.
Oh yeah, you have to peel it off and take skin with it.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And I was actually teaching some ladies on the range how to shoot, and so I just had to grin and bear it for a minute, because they were in the middle of a shooting string, and I wanted to pay attention to what was going on, making sure that I didn't want to freak out and freak them out, type of thing. Just avoid it. Wear proper shooting attire. Wear a T-shirt, wear a sweatshirt, whatever.
Yeah, you can wear a T-shirt and jeans and sneakers. It's nothing fancy.
Shooting is not a. You're not gonna go to the symphony before or after shooting. Usually, I don't know, but
I had a date that would, I didn't have the date, but a couple came in and they were dressed pretty fancy.
Yeah.
Well, you get guys
3-piece suit and all this other stuff.
Yeah, the symphony after the range. So
I actually enjoy the symphony. Just by the way,
it's because you're cultured.
I'm not a heathen.
Well, no, and it's interesting because a lot of people, you come here 5-6 o'clock. A lot of people do come after work,
sure,
and so they're in business attire, and even you have maybe ladies who have lower cut shirts or just there's a neckline, but even guys, they'll wear a button down. Yeah. And they'll unbutton it a couple buttons or something. Yeah. That's all the space it needs to.
The potential's there, and if you're bumping up from handguns to rifle rounds,
ooh, that's gonna hurt.
At 5.56,
That's hot, and it stays hot.
And you will scar. Mm-hmm. Talk to some of the guys that have been in the military, that have taken, down their clothes or their vests or whatever. They have scars.
Mm-hmm. I believe it.
It is extremely painful.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of brass flying everywhere, some people like to go onto the range and take their time, one shot at a time, really just take it easy. Some people just unload and mag dump as fast as they can.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that from a safety perspective?
Keep it controlled.
Yeah, it's not illegal. Here's some people may not understand. It's not illegal to buy a fully automatic. You can possess and own one. It's just cost prohibitive for some people. I don't care as long as they're keeping their firing under control and they're not grouping in my ceiling. But the problem is less the noise, but more the brass on the floor. If you're a reloader, you want to keep your brass. Please police your brass. Don't just leave it to roller skate around on the floor. That could be a hazard. You can fall.
You could trip.
You can roll an ankle. You might not think that 45 casing is that big of a step, but you can roll an ankle on a piece of brass.
100%.
Police your brass.
Well, especially when we've all seen the Home Alone movies where they put all those marbles on the ground.
They step on there and slip and fall.
If you have a lot of brass on the floor, it could turn into a bunch of marbles under your feet.
It's a reality. It is true.
Even a 22, you step on it the right way or put your weight on it, it can slip and fall. And God forbid you slip and fall with a firearm in your hand.
Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of ranges that I've been to, at least, and this was back in Illinois, but you couldn't fire quickly. You had to wait at least a couple of seconds.
Ranges
there's a lot that way.
But it is important, and I like that we don't have that rule because shooting rapidly is a skill that should be trained too.
Sure,
so if people are coming to train,
definitely,
they should have that ability to be able to do that.
You brought up the falling gun. Another side note. If you accidentally drop a gun off the booth or you drop it on the floor, do not go to save that gun.
Oh, yeah.
Do not grab a falling gun.
Who was it? I heard, I think this was one of my instructors saying that, I think it was one of the instructors talking about during police training. He said there was a girl, she was a seasoned veteran as far as law enforcement goes, and she dropped her firearm because of hot brass, actually, I think. And then she went to retrieve it and she killed herself.
Whoa.
Yeah. She pulled the trigger and it shot her right in the head and she died right then.
You never grab a falling gun. Don't try and pick it or catch it before it hits the ground. Let the gun hit the ground.
And they're designed to fall and not go off.
Maybe not the SIG 320.
Just don't buy that.
Just kidding. I think they got that fixed. Yeah, you're right. Most guns now have modern guns have drop safeties on them for that reason. Mm-hmm. I know you might scratch your gun. Heaven forbid that you get a battle scar on your firearm. It's a tool. It is not a showpiece.
Just get it Cerakoted. You'll be fine.
You can do that. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that was just another tangent. Sorry, that still falls under range.
That's important.
Etiquette.
What about revolvers? Are those drop safe? Let's just go with modern revolvers like
modern
LCR, or
you should be good with,
because you have what they call a transfer bar,
mm-hmm.
And that moves out of the way revolvers when you pull the trigger, right?
No, when you pull the trigger, it actually comes up in. So the hammer, if it were to just drop by itself, it just hits the frame of the gun. It's cut to where it wouldn't actually hit the firing pin. But when you legitimately pull the trigger, the transfer bar will come up in front of the hammer, and it will transfer the hammer's energy into that pin.
Good to know.
Yeah,
because that was the first thing I thought of. Obviously, you're not going to try to catch one either way.
Yeah,
but actually, that brings up another good point. What if you are firing a semi-auto handgun and you drop your mag in front of the firing line? Like, let's say it falls, it hits the booth and skips and falls onto the range.
Yeah.
What's the proper etiquette in that instance?
Just raise your hand. Let the range safety officer know.
We have squeegees.
Or with the squeegee, I don't mind if you can reach it with the squeegee, use the squeegee. If you can't, let the range safety officer know. If it is 1 inch beyond that red firing line, use the squeegee. Don't cross the firing line. it seems petty and silly. Oh, it's just right there. I don't care. It's a rule. That safety line is there for a reason. There's no use just pushing the envelope like, oh, I'll just grab the damn squeegee.
Yeah, or because you also, even just from a non-safety perspective, you run the risk of getting yelled at and getting kicked out by the RSO.
I've had people do repeat offenses that if they would have humbled themselves, quite honestly, if they would have taken the direction from the range safety officer, they wouldn't have got kicked out.
I think that's the key to etiquette today is don't act like a cocky little, SOB, I guess you could say, but I don't
Ricky's
like saying
getting
that.
saucy today.
He must not have had a lot of sleep last night.
But for real, we all have stories. We all have war stories. We all have history in the firearms. Some of us less than others.
Yeah.
But you don't have to come with a cocky attitude.
Come
with an attitude of you're able to learn something. All of us are able to grow each and every day.
And it's usually two I guess age groups that have a real problem with taking direction from range safety officers. It's the real old boy that's like, I've been shooting my whole life. What's that kid got me? And that happens a lot. Or it's the really new shooter, again,
that's watched YouTube.
That spends time on YouTube. That's watched, I've got this video and I watched it. You're an idiot. How much training have you done? Well, I don't need training. Well, then you don't know anything. It's those two groups. And then it's the wide spectrum in the middle that's normally pretty understanding and wants to learn. That's it. Just come down a few notches. The range safeties the RSOs are there for your safety and the safety of others. They're not there to kick you out of the range.
Well, and that's one thing you brought up, YouTube, and being in the firearms industry only for a little while now, I've learned more just being in the range from people who have been here every day or from people who have served in the military who work here now. I learned more from them in 5 minutes than I did in anything on YouTube.
And I watch YouTube. I mean,
we all do.
Yeah, don't get us wrong. Like we will. There's some technique that I like to see, and then if it's theory, I'll try it. And if it doesn't work for me, then it doesn't work for me, because it may work for Travis Haley or those guys. And those, they are very proficient and amazing instructors. I'm not saying Costa and Haley and those guys, T-Mac, those guys are amazing. But it may, just because you watch something doesn't make you an expert.
Yeah.
I watch drag racing. I watch MMA. I'm not going to get in an octagon with anybody. Just because I watch it doesn't mean I know how to do it.
Right, or you're not going to get in your car and drag down the road.
I can't guarantee that.
Even with the experience I have in gunsmithing and working in shooting or gun stores, I should say, for quite a while now, when I'm out on a retail floor, every single day I'll get that question, at least one question, if not two or three, that I have no clue what they're talking about. I have no idea. I don't know what that gun is that they just mentioned.
Maybe we can talk about that a little bit, because most of the time, I'd say 9 times out of 10, a shooting range, at least an indoor range, has a retail floor associated with it. And there are plenty of mistakes you can make in the retail side of things, looking at guns or even accessories and stuff.
And I'll preface that by saying our staff makes mistakes too.
Nobody's perfect.
I've said this before. I think we did a really good job with who we have on staff. None of our employees are like know-it-alls or super arrogant. We have some very,
which is common in the shooting world.
Usually, and if you spend a lot of time going to gun stores, you know the stereotype.
Well, we touched on that with Brenda.
Yeah, Mr. Macho.
People coming in saying this is what you need, and this is the best gun ever, and this is what you need to buy right now. And
we have opinionated staff. I'm not saying we don't, but they're not overbearing on their opinions. We make mistakes too. We don't know everything, and we teach our staff to not pretend that they know it, because that's way worse. If I go somewhere and somebody obviously lies to me, I don't trust. I'm not going to shop there.
Right.
Anyway, let's carry on. Sorry.
I think so. He was just talking about etiquette on the
in retail side.
When I'm handing a gun to somebody, when they're handing a gun to me, magazine out, action open, lock, slide lock to the rear, bolt back to the rear, whatever, so that I know the condition of that firearm, or at least that gun is out of battery so it can't fire. At that point, I'm going to check the gun. Never do you hand a gun to somebody and say, oh, it's unloaded, don't worry about it. And this is another thing. What do people think they're going to see with a gun by looking down the muzzle end of the barrel? Are they
like pointing it at their face?
Yeah, I've seen that so many times.
Maybe they're appreciating the rifling of the barrel.
Yeah, they're looking at the gun, looking it over. And there was a guy in the other day that was looking at our guns when I came in to get Blake, but he was that guy. And he's looking all over these guns and
he's
looking at the finish.
He's looking at their rifling.
Yeah.
Points that gun right at his head.
Now that being said, I'll check riflings by opening the breech.
Yeah,
and
you
I'll put
can
a piece
shine
of
a
paper
flashlight down there,
and I'll
or
look
whatever.
from the muzzle end.
Yeah.
So I've heard stories of people saying it was on another. I listen to a lot of gun related content. Anyway, he talked to somebody, or he heard a story of somebody. I wonder if you can see the bullet go off if you look down the barrel.
What?
You may see it. I don't know, but I'm not
Be
going to.
the last thing you ever see.
Where's the logic, honestly?
Yeah.
You can't move fast
with
enough.
most modern handguns, you can take the barrel out of the gun
Very
in about
easily.
30
Super
seconds.
simple.
So if you wanted to appreciate and admire the rifling of the barrel, that's probably the safe way to do it. But in terms of shopping for a firearm, and we'll dive into handguns and long guns, but let's just start with handguns. What do you like to see when somebody is looking at a firearm? Because, when you're test firing it, maybe do you point it at the ground or point it up or just point it away from somebody? What makes you feel the most comfortable?
So safe direction is always important. And you gotta, at your home, you have to establish what you feel is the safest direction, right? We talked about that in the general safety rules. Inside the retail space, it is either the floor or the ceiling.
And kudos to our customers. I do see that a lot.
Yeah.
They're very conscientious of where they're pointing that gun when they're dry firing.
Yeah, because that's what I do. Anytime anybody hands me a gun, I point it downrange, or what I know is a wall that's an exterior wall.
That's going to stop that bullet, or at least slow it down enough to not cause
Some
injury.
gun stores have almost like a shooting booth, I guess, for lack of a better term, inside their stores that has ballistic panels, on three sides. So if the customer wants to dry fire a gun, the staff walks them over to that place, and that's where they dry fire the gun. They have little targets or whatever on the wall to check out the sights. That's kind of a good idea.
If you have half a dozen people who want to dry fire a gun, though, it's going to take a long line.
But it's nonetheless, you got to establish what's the safest direction.
Right.
Because, again, we're treating everything like it's loaded, right? No exceptions.
No matter what.
Yeah.
What about long guns, though? Because we have an impressive wall of long guns.
Yeah, there's a couple still up there.
And I think the rule is here, you're free to, they all have flags in them. Mm-hmm. They all have chamber flags that actually start in the action and go all the way through, pointed out to the barrel, so it's completely obvious that they're clear.
Yep.
But you can still just pick them up, but it's still a good idea to point them either at the ground or the ceiling or in a safe direction.
Yeah. We also have animal heads up high, so if you want to pretend that you're hunting,
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Point right at the target.
Yeah. Whenever I'm handing a rifle or something, I'm always dropping the bolt, making sure that, and I'll hand it to him open bolt.
Well, and so I want to kind of put a caveat on what I said earlier. If there's a lady or somebody new to shooting that has absolutely no clue how to function that firearm, they don't know how to open the slide or rack the bolt to the rear or whatever. All you need to do is you need to come to an associate and say, my gun is in my bag, or bring the case out. My gun is in this case. I have no clue what condition it is in. I can't function it. Can you teach me about this firearm? At that point, the associate should be adept enough
they're not going to reach in your purse.
they can take this gun, clear it safely by pointing it at the floor, make sure that it's clear, and then at that point proceed to disassemble the firearm or whatever instruction you need.
Yeah.
So don't feel nervous that you have to come in here and know how to even function your firearm. Just let us know, and we'll take care of it.
And if you want to spend time, one-on-one time, we do private instruction, or we have some ladies instructors that are awesome. We want to be able to, we don't want to belittle the customer in any sort of way. We want to teach as much as possible. So if you feel like you need to spend some time with just an instructor, just whether in the classroom or in the range. My RSOs are not there to teach you a lesson, so you can't just say, hey, will you spend some time? They might be in there for 2-3 minutes, but that's not their job, is to teach, right? They can teach, but they're not instructors. Let's put it that way. Don't be scared to come out and talk to Rick or me or any of the other.
Well, and any of us are willing to give, even if it's not a private lesson, a 15-minute rundown, just so you can have an enjoyable experience. If it's you're brand new to it. And
another pet peeve, I guess, right here is guys can be jerks, right? Complete a-holes. It's not uncommon. I'm going to say they tend. It's not uncommon for a husband or a boyfriend to hand their lady companion a large firearm and think it's funny.
A large caliber, like a 44 mag, or
and what they're doing in reality is ruining the experience. If she is not used to shooting or never shot before, don't give her a huge gun, 44 Magnum. Even a 1911 might be too much in 45. And do not buy or let her shoot like the LCP or something really small in a 380. Okay? You need to have a little bit more understanding of a firearm to run a small 380.
Yeah.
It's not a cute gun.
Yeah.
Start her off with a 22 or maybe a full-size 9mm. Something's got some weight to it that absorbs some of that recoil. Don't be the guy that thinks it's funny that she has to manage some ridiculous amount of recoil, and she doesn't.
Or the guy has to show off his, like, look what I can do. You shoot this, and that shows I'm strong. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Any experienced woman shooter can handle any caliber. They just have to have the proper training. Same with guys. Everybody has to have the proper foundational training. And that's
a better way to put it. It's not that she can't handle the recoil. I know some very capable women, very capable shooters that can
far
handle
more
anything.
capable than any of us sitting at this table.
Yes,
definitely,
100%. So it's not that they can't. It's not that they're too small and they're too weak or whatever. They can do it. But if they're new shooters, don't ruin the experience, because if they have a negative experience, if they think all guns are going to recoil that bad, then they're not going to want to shoot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're doing the hobby a disservice that
Absolutely.
way.
We had an experience actually in one of the classes. So one of the ladies came up before class. She's like, I am 2 minutes new to shooting. She's been in a gun store for 2 minutes, and that's as much as she's ever spent. Her brother and her sister had just purchased a firearm for her. They got the LCP2.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at her and I said, I didn't want to be offensive, but I was like, usually this gun is, even though it looks small and unassuming, this gun is a whole lot more to handle than people realize. And I was like, I would put you into a 22 target gun. We put her into the Smith & Wesson Victory, which is a 22, and it has weight behind it. Weight is your friend with firearms. But so she went out and she took that class and she shot that 22. She loved it. I mean, she had the experience she was looking for. Then the instructor at the end let her shoot her gun, her 380. She shot it one time and she said, "Oh, I'm selling that thing."
Yeah,
and we see that in classes a lot, where people don't feel comfortable with this. They buy it because it's small and maybe it fits their hand better.
Well,
but
they think it's cute. They do it a lot of different colors that might be cool for the lady to buy.
There's a visual appeal to it, but the function of it is going to be a lot more difficult.
It requires more technique.
Mm-hmm. And especially when people are new to shooting and they don't have a good solid grip, that smaller gun the recoil may not actually operate in the slide back, and you might limp wrist it and you might have a malfunction.
Short stroke the slide or something.
Yeah. Yep. And that actually brings me to another good point. Renting firearms. Obviously, you want to try something out, or maybe you want to shoot a gun you don't have or never have shot before. What's kind of the etiquette behind renting a firearm?
You don't have to have a complete understanding of guns to rent a gun. Okay, first of all, we have foreigners come in that rent guns that have never touched guns, and we're cool with that. We're 100% cool with that. There are some age requirements on some of our guns. We're not going to rent handguns to anybody under 21. Same with autos. If you're under 21, you can't rent the auto. If you're under 18, you're not going to get to shoot an auto. That's just the way it is. So keep that in mind. but you're welcome to rent guns if you come in. You can have an adult with you if you want your 18-year-old to shoot a handgun. That's fine, but you got to have somebody 21 there. That's the adult. Mm-hmm. You do have to buy our ammunition. That's probably the customer's biggest complaint. We have an agreement with the manufacturers and with our distributors. Those guns are basically, I guess, leased would be a best way to put it to us. So we have to honor that lease by using 100% factory ammunition.
And as I mentioned earlier, we've had a couple blow up already because people using their own
not our
reloads.
guns, their guns.
Not our rental, but their own personal firearms, and that's the last thing we want in our rental guns.
Well, and I think that
blowing them up.
Policy is pretty much accepted across the board. Is that if you're going to rent a gun,
universal.
You're going to have to use factory
and
or store-bought ammo.
I've been to ranges that if you even shoot on their range, you have to use their ammo.
Some are that way.
And that's going back to rule number 4 about your target and what's beyond it, because some people might decide to bring in tracer ammo or bring in something that's not compatible with the berm that you're using.
Yeah, which is a good side note here. No tracers, no penetrating rounds, no incendiary, which should be pretty obvious. Green tip are included. We no green tip, please. I know you got it for a smoking deal, but no green tip in our range. It's not that our berm won't handle it. It's that it's really hard on everything else. And I don't think you want to pay for a target carrier. I know what they cost, and if you want to know what they cost, that's the problem. Let's just say it's a lot of money.
More than you are willing to spend.
It's a lot of money.
Especially those nice ones that spin around and are programmable and everything.
You could buy a car. So let's just not break stuff.
Yeah, you have to consider your ammo.
Same with birdshot. You're welcome to bring your shotguns, but please no birdshot.
Buckshot?
Buckshot and slug only.
Because some ranges I know are slugs only.
Is there any specific size with buck? Or is it just any buckshot?
Well, you need something with a little bit more weight. So the problem with birdshot is it will pepper if it's 25 yards or more, it'll pepper the carrier. But what really happens is it doesn't penetrate the berm. The berm doesn't capture it. It will bounce back because there's not enough weight for it to go into the rubber berm. So it makes a mess. You'll get BBs all the way back to the shooting line. You'll feel BBs hitting you, not with enough velocity to cause injury, but it's just messy. It's not. We just don't do it.
Well, and I think that is probably the best thing to close on is when you're done shooting and you're ready to go home, what's the best way to pack up and clean up the booth?
Sure.
Because you do want to. One of the things I love about Independence is how clean the range is. We keep a super clean range, and it's important to clean up after yourself when you're done.
Yeah.
So the next shooter
leave
can
it ready for the next guy.
Enjoy a nice clean booth.
So we have garbage cans. Ammunition boxes don't need to go on the floor. It happens. I understand it. But we have garbage cans for a reason. So please take your target and anything other than your brass, throw it in the garbage can. If you're keeping your brass, have something ready to put it in. You can even put it in the ammo box that you brought it in. Otherwise, the RSO can do it. I understand that, but why not do it if you're there? Push the brass across the firing line. Just make it tidy for the next person. Make sure that when you leave, washing your hands is important. Okay, that goes to the hygiene part. When I talk about hygiene, it's kind of funny. People think, not talking about how you shower and brush your teeth, but I am talking about washing your hands. When you get lead residue, powder residue on your hands, so rubbing your eyes, picking your nose, eating a hamburger afterwards.
Well, even in your skin, it'll just start to
penetrate.
absorb.
You will
into
absorb
your
it.
skin.
There's not enough lead from one visit to have a lot of concern, but prolonged exposure.
The cumulative effect is a real thing.
So we have D-lead soap in our restrooms and in the vestibule of our ranges. We have D-lead soap there that it doesn't neutralize lead, but it gets it off the skin, I guess is the best way to put it. It helps release it from whatever's keeping it on there. So please wash your hands, clean it up. Don't think it's not a big deal. I've talked to very active shooters that have spent time in other ranges that their lead levels are extremely high. Because they didn't.
And lead poisoning is no fun.
No
fun way to start dying.
No.
Yeah.
So, and that even goes back to clothing a little bit. I mean, obviously, we spend a little more time on the range and in front of the firing line, more than most people. But to that end, I've actually got a dedicated pair of kind of shooting shoes. They're just a pair of beater Nikes or whatever. They're nothing special, but I know that walking on the range, you're going to get lead on it. You're going to get gunshot residue and everything like that, and powder. So I actually just keep those in my car, and when I come here, I change into them.
Well, and that's another
thing. It's not getting anywhere else.
That's another thing to think about. Do you walk on your carpet with the shoes that you just on the range with? And then do you have little toddlers that are then crawling on that carpet, getting it on their fingers, putting their fingers in their mouth?
Yeah. Pets, sniffing or moving around or whatever.
And like I said, if you're a once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks of a shooter, there's probably not enough to really cause a problem. If you're taking a class and you go downrange to take some of our classes, it's probably not as big of a problem. Our air handling unit, that's the other thing, is airborne, right? That's a big deal. So if you go to a range that may not be as up to date or up to par, I guess would be a better way, with their filtration system, if you're not getting enough air movement, you can get exposed to airborne stuff. And that's probably... That's the biggest exposure, is through the nose and mouth, right, where you're breathing. So here at the range, you shouldn't have to worry about it. We got awesome airflow.
You can't even smell the gunshot powder or gunpowder.
I apologize if it's really cold or really hot when you come shoot. We're having issues with our temperature control that somehow they can't figure it out. But yeah, just know that the hazard's there. It's real. It's a real
something
hazard
to consider. Yeah.
Another thing I want to bring up as far as leaving the range clean is sweep all the brass forward of the firing line.
Yep.
And remember, just like walking around the retail floor, you're not taking the gun back to your case that's in the back of the range on the tables. You're taking your case to the bench, and then your gun goes into the case or back into the holster, wherever it goes, but it does that at the booth. So you're not carrying the gun around.
And if if you're a shooter and you see somebody do it, and our range officer might have his back turned, it may be uncomfortable, but remind that other shooter, hey,
bring the case up, leave the gun.
Just remember, there's a rule, and we have our rules stated inside the range, and I did that for a reason, to help legitimize my range officers when they say, hey, look at that.
There,
see that you agreed to these rules.
And when you bring your case to the bench, you want to make sure you rotate that case, so when you put your firearm in the case, it will be pointed downrange the whole time. That's something to consider too.
Well, and that's another thing too. When you're unpacking, you look inside your case and you say, oh, which way is the gun pointing? Let me rotate it. So that when I take it out, I'm not flagging myself and everybody else behind me.
In reality, it's just common sense.
Yeah.
And then you apply that with courtesy at the range, and that's it.
Yeah.
It's not hard.
What I do on my case, on my gun cases,
you mark it.
I put an arrow to where that muzzle's going, so then you just make sure you point that downrange and you're good to go.
That's a good idea.
Easy peasy.
Yeah.
So, any closing thoughts on
clothing?
I have clothing
Well, we already know you like spaghetti strap.
Yeah.
But any closing thoughts on range etiquette? Maybe something that we didn't cover that you want to touch on? Any more good stories?
Yeah, real quick. Kids on the range. I had somebody yesterday bring toddlers.
Like 2 years old?
Very, very little children. And not to shoot, but just to hang out while he shot. Please don't. You won't be allowed to shoot. We're not babysitters, so we're not going to be watching your kids while you shoot. Nobody under 9 can shoot on the range. If you have somebody younger, I've let people go in double ear pro, right? The kids will not be shooting if they're under 9. That's just the way it is. But if you have no choice, you don't have anybody to watch the youngins.
It can be a traumatic experience for children.
Well, and they're developing still.
And their eyes, they're and you brought up lead too. I mean, they're
and because they have less blood volume in them, it's a higher concentration. So that's to be considered. But don't bring your
just
little kids.
Don't.
Yeah, I don't know how to say that without sound like a real jerk, but that's just the truth.
It's just common sense.
Yeah. And then just be mindful of the rules. If you have any questions, we have a great safety brief video, to pat myself on the back, but it is a great safety video that goes through all the rules. We still have to figure out how to get it on our website. We'll get it there, but Come in, it takes about 4 or 5 minutes. You watch the video, it covers everything. And then if you have questions, instead of being or feel like you're being belittled by the range officer, how about you ask?
Yeah, I think, and to close it up, I think it really boils down to about 4 key points. 1, think about it before you do it.
Yeah.
2, mind the 4 rules of gun safety
Please.
at all times. 3, over communicate and ask questions.
Yep.
And 4, clean up after yourself when you're done.
Yeah, it's not difficult. It really is not.
It's pretty simple, but you have to maintain it and keep maintain that top of mind awareness of it.
And again, no uncased or unholstered guns in the store. We fight that a lot.
Every day, you think?
Every day. And it is literally written on the front door.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I imagine just like there are people who probably don't even
No.
Pay
notice that
attention
it's
to it.
there.
And I
so.
understand that, but I guess the more you hear it as the customers, and the more you understand it, please, and tell your buddies the same thing. I don't want to have any confusion or have any accidents inside the store or the range.
Well, and the point behind all of this is so you can have fun, because obviously shooting is super fun.
Yeah.
But you have to maintain that safety, and as long as you maintain that safety, you can have fun.
Yeah.
And that's what we want you to do.
I guarantee if you accidentally shoot somebody because you didn't follow protocols or the range rules or something, your life will change.
100%.
Yeah, and it could have been easily avoided.
Well, we're going to end on that somewhat negative note, but
It's positive.
it's positive. Just be safe, and if you're safe, you'll be able to have fun.
Yeah.
Ricky, any closing thoughts?
Yep.
No
he's
thoughts
done.
at all. No thoughts at all from him.
Thanks,
so,
guys. Yeah.
Thank you for listening. And if you have a question or something that we missed, email us podcast@iishooting.com or find Independence Indoor Shooting on Facebook and send us a message.
Yeah, and if you have any particular topics or if you have a gun that you want to review on or anything like that, put that in there too. We'll be happy to do something that you guys want to hear.
Yep. The more feedback we get, the better show we can make for you.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for listening.
And I won't wear spaghetti straps.
Oh, God, not again. Thanks.
See you guys.
Thanks for listening to Range Minded. If you've got a comment, question, idea for the show, or any feedback, send us an email to podcast@iishooting.com or send us a message on our Facebook page. Just search Independence Indoor Shooting. Again, thanks for listening to Range Minded. We'll see you next time.